In 2002, deep in the dense tropical jungles of South America, Leon S. Kennedy moved under a canopy of tangled vines and filtered sunlight. By his side was Jack Krauser, a seasoned operative with a soldier's instincts and a reputation carved from war. Their mission was precise: track down Javier Hidalgo, a former drug lord whose sudden interest in the Umbrella Corporation had drawn the attention of U.S. intelligence. Javier had vanished from public view months earlier. In his wake, whispers spread of shipments moving under cover of night, of armed patrols replacing farmers, of entire villages sealing themselves off from the outside. Leon and Krauser followed those threads into the heart of the rainforest, where the humidity clung like a second skin. When they finally approached the remote riverside village, something felt wrong. No fires burned, no voices carried on the wind. The huts stood open and abandoned, as though their occupants had fled misstep. Then the first figure appeared. A villager staggered out from behind a crumbling stone wall. More emerged from doorways and alleys. Their bodies bore a familiar corruption, the decay, the erratic twitching. They were infected. As Leon and Krauser scanned the shapes advancing toward them, they noticed something else. Marks carved into the flesh of several undead. A distinct emblem. A coiled serpent. The insignia of the sacred snakes. Javier's private faction. These had not been random villagers. They had been loyal to him. Leon and Krauser pushed deeper into the ruined village, following the trail left by their missing guide. The jungle pressed close around the abandoned huts, the air thick with moisture and the smell of decay. When they finally found him, he was barely clinging to life. His final gesture was not toward Leon or Krauser, but toward the river, toward something lurking in the dark water. With his last strength, he whispered a warning about a girl, one who had brought devils into this place. Then his body went still. Moments later, the river erupted. A monstrous shape surged from the water. It seized the guy's corpse and pulled it beneath the surface, leaving only ripples and a smear of blood to mark the attack. Leon and Krauser were left with a grim certainty. Umbrella's influence was here. They pressed forward, battling more of the warped creatures infesting the village. BOWs that suggested experimentation far beyond the typical bioorganic weapons Leon had fought in the past. Eventually they found her, a young girl, standing alone amid the ruins. Manuela Hidalgo. Whatever had happened in the village, she had survived it, though the fear in her eyes suggested she knew exactly what the horrors were that were unleashed. Before they could move her to safety, a creature from the river returned. It was drawn to the girl like a predator scenting prey. Leon and Krauser fell into combat, driving the creature back through the tight corridors of the village. When it cornered them near a rickety bell tower, Leon made a split-second call. A shot rang out, shattering the supports. With a groaning collapse, the tower crashed down, burying the creature beneath the rubble and scattering dust through the air. Breathing hard, Krauser took in the scene. The fallen beast, the girl, and now the shattered remnants of what had been once the remote settlement. But now it bore the unmistakable signature of bioorganic warfare. His gaze shifted to Leon. There was more to this world than Krauser had ever been told. And now, surrounded by the wreckage of another of Umbrella's hidden tragedies, he wanted to know everything Leon knew about the monsters humanity was now forced to face. The mission had already changed, and Krauser would never see the world the same again. Rising floodwaters forced Leon, Krauser, and Manuela to push deeper into the territory controlled by Javier. The river had breached its banks, swallowing paths and homes alike, turning the outskirts of the jungle into a murky labyrinth. With every step, the current grew stronger, as if the land itself were trying to sweep them towards the massive structure looming ahead, the region's water dam. However, the dam itself was more than an infrastructure. It was Javier's stronghold. The moment the survivors approached the loading platforms, they sensed it. This place was not abandoned. Something in the air felt charged, thick with the presence of something unnatural. Then Javier's forces emerged. Bioorganic monstrosities, products of Umbrella's forbidden science. They were released into the rising shallows. They surged toward Leon and Krauser, splashing through knee-deep water as the two operatives fought to hold their ground. Through the chaos, Javier himself appeared on an elevated walkway, illuminated by the dim glow of overhead lights. He did not look at Leon or Krauser first. Manuela was no hostage or runaway experiment. She was his daughter, and Javier had changed her. The creatures he unleashed were not a result of Umbrella's supply deal gone wrong. They were born from his own involvement in the forbidden science. His own experiments with the T-Veronica Virus, a strain capable of reshaping the human body into something extraordinary, something monstrous. The same virus flowed in her veins, granting her unnatural resilience and a connection to the horrors Javier controlled. This was a father who had sacrificed an entire region and his own daughter to the corruption of the T-Veronica Virus. And whatever Javier planned for Manuela next would be far worse than anything unleashed upon the doomed village behind them. After entering the dam complex, Leon and Krauser found documents scattered across medical stations and laboratory benches. Records detailing injections, viral load measurements, and long-term graft procedures. They pieced together the fragments. Manuela had been receiving controlled doses of the T-Veronica virus, not to weaponize her, but as a lifeline. The virus had been stabilizing her failing body from the inside, suppressing a lethal illness that otherwise would have taken her life years earlier. Javier wasn't sacrificing his daughter, he was trying to save her. Javier had been abducting young girls across the region, children who had matched his daughter's age and physiology. Through forced organ harvesting and repeated transplantation attempts, he had sought a cure for Manuela's deteriorating condition. Each failure had pushed him further into madness, towards the promise of T-Veronica. Manuela carried the weight of that truth in her silence. She was alive because others had not been allowed to live. And with every step forward, Leon and Krauser drew closer to the man who had orchestrated it all, and to the consequences of his choices. A low guttural sound echoed somewhere ahead, too deep and resonant to belong to anything human. It towered above them, its limbs swollen and contorted. But this time, in the creature's face, distorted though it was, Leon and Krauser saw traces of something unmistakable. Fragile resemblance to Manuela. This creature had been once Hilda Hidalgo, Manuela's mother. Another victim of the same illness, but without the careful treatments and controlled doses that had stabilized Manuela's condition. The virus had overwhelmed her, twisting her body into a monstrous reflection of a woman she once was. Now driven by instinct and agony, she lunged at them with harrowing force. The battle raged through the narrow passageways, every blow from Hilda shaking the structure around them. Leon and Krauser dodged her sweeping arms and razor-sharp appendages, firing whenever they found an opening. Manuela's anguished expression confirmed the unspoken tragedy. Her mother had become a living nightmare, long before they arrived. Pushed to its limits, the creature let out a fractured, mournful cry, and convulsed violently. Spikes erupted from her flesh in a sudden, explosive burst. Bone-like projectiles shot through the air with lethal speed. One spike tore through Krauser's arm, knocking him back. As Hilda collapsed, her massive body settling into a grotesque stillness, the chamber fell silent. The mutation had consumed her completely. There was nothing left of the woman she had once been. In the wake of Hilda's collapse, the dam's interior rumbled with deep, resonant tremors, an omen of something worse stirring beneath the metal grates. Javier had abandoned any last pretense of humanity. The virus he had worshipped as salvation now overtook him entirely. His body convulsed, flesh merging with monstrous organic mass around him. In moments he became something vast and unrecognizable, a towering abomination guided by rage. The creature surged forward, its new limbs slamming through concrete, throwing cascades of debris as it advanced on Leon and Krauser. Together, the two operatives managed to carve deep wounds into the monster. In one brutal maneuver, they severed one of its massive, mutated arms. But Javier, what was left of him, only grew more desperate. As he roared once more, Manuela stepped forward. Her eyes shone with an eerie light, the telltale shimmer of the T-Veronica awakening within her. Flames billowed from her fingertips. The virus granting her power at a cost she fully understood. Every moment she used it was tipping her into the same irreversible mutation that had consumed her mother. Yet she fought. With each blast of fire, the creature recoiled, its bark-like armor blistering and cracking under the assault. Leon and Krauser seized the opening she created. The final eruption of flame engulfed him. When the smoke cleared, Javier lay in a smoldering heap, his massive form collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Moments later, the thrum of rotor blades cut through the humid air as a rescue helicopter descended towards the survivors. As the helicopter lifted away from the burning dam and the sinking remnants of Javier's empire, Leon looked back at the ruins below. Another chapter of the bioorganic horror had ended. By 2002, the Umbrella Corporation, once untouchable and omnipresent, was rotting away from the inside. Years of containment failures, covert disasters, and whispered investigations had eroded its foundation. The corporation that once controlled the global flow of bioorganic weapons now struggled to contain its own unraveling infrastructure. Umbrella's collapse created a power vacuum, and the vacuum did not remain empty for long. Former employees slipped through the cracks, carrying with them classified research and weaponized pathogens, establishing private networks and black market channels without the fear of corporate retribution that had once kept them in line. Among these taking advantage of the chaos was Dr. Frederick Downing, a former Umbrella researcher. He resurfaced within the WP Corporation, rising through its research and development ranks. By the time he secured a senior position, Downing had everything he needed, and he began laying groundwork for a new phase of T-virus research. Not to expand its destructive potential, but to engineer its cure. At least, that was the appearance. In reality, Downing operated like many displaced Umbrella scientists of the era, straddling the line between innovation and exploitation. He began to expand his network beyond the corporate world. His new position at the WP Corporation gave him both legitimacy and cover, an ideal platform for which to court clients who had long been excluded from the bioweapons market. One such client was the Republic of Egypt. Downing established contacts with representatives loyal to General Miguel Grande, a military ruler seeking to modernize his nation's power through unconventional means. Conventional arms had limits. Biological weapons, however, promised a new kind of influence. However, the general wanted proof, and Downing was ready to provide it. Using his access, he orchestrated the covert removal of T-virus samples from his secure storage. The samples were funneled through a web of smugglers and shell contracts until they reached India, an isolated testing ground chosen for its remoteness and lack of international oversight. The intent was simple: demonstrate the virus's effectiveness, its reliability, and its terrifying usefulness as a strategic weapon. Once the T-virus samples reached India and the preparations for demonstration were underway, Frederick Downing positioned himself for a second phase of his attack: controlled outbreak. A controlled outbreak was only half of his sales pitch. To command real power, and to justify an ongoing partnership, he needed to show he alone could contain what he unleashed. The vaccine would ensure the test remained confined to ground zero. More importantly, it would prove that Downing could both start and stop a biological crisis. Now Downing had all the leverage he needed to begin his ascent as a bioweapons broker in the vacuum left by Umbrella's collapse.